Welcome to another episode of the Random Sound Mind podcast. I'm your host, JT. Today's topic is going to be something you have no doubt seen in the news last week and even some of the week before, which is the shooting of Renee Good in Minnesota by an ICE officer. Now, what I'm going to attempt to do today is just go over some things that I think are at a deeper level of what's happening with all of this, the protests, ICE, illegals, all of it. In a sense, I'm going to try to play 4D chess instead of surface level things you might have seen or heard in other media. This is from the actual ICE officer. Here we go.
Every morning, just so you know, it'll be the same fight when you come
So
talk
that's
to
her
us later.
lesbian
That's
partner
fine.
antagonizing him in his face.
You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car.
Yeah,
Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the car.
and you heard her say, "Drive, baby, drive." Told her to get out of the effing car. And she hit the gas, gunned it, hit him. She got shot.
Overnight, federal agents and protesters facing off again after an ICE officer shot a Venezuelan migrant in the leg. According to DHS, the officer acted in self-defense following an attack by the man and two other people using a snow shovel and broom.
So an ICE officer was attacked by an illegal with a snow shovel and broom and shot the guy in the leg. Didn't kill him, but still you're going to watch people complain and say that was unjustified.
Earlier, Governor Tim Walz had urged Minnesotans to protest peacefully and to document what he called ICE agents' atrocities.
They're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement.
The incidents are here. Take a look. Federal agents approach protesters during a Friday night rally in Santa Ana. Grab someone holding a loudspeaker and pull him away as other protesters move up, including one wearing a dark shirt.
You saw the one guy go down, if you want to see that again, and he's the one that you'll see what happened to him.
The officers then grabbed the protester with black shirt, Caden Rumler, who sent me these photos from the hospital where he says he is being treated for a serious eye injury. The other protesters seem struggling with officers also
Struggling, that's called
media.
resisting.
DHS responding to Fox 11 saying this was a mob throwing rocks, bottles, and fireworks.
I just want to say, with all these protests, whether it's Renee Good or this guy who got shot in the eye or the people who go to jail, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Total lack of disregard for law enforcement and law enforcement orders. And then to physically come at them, that's being stupid. So people talked about Renee Good being a tragedy. The whole thing could have been avoided. Her lesbian partner tells her to drive when he's telling you to get out of the car. Who should you have listened to? Officers don't have to tell you 3, 4, 5, 6 times to do something. One of the first points you'll see this picture of a guy named George Soros. Now, if you don't, there's the image that he broke the Bank of England. If you don't know who George Soros is, I don't know if you've been living under a rock, but he funds a lot of different organizations, mainly to get in attorneys generals in various cities who do not prosecute. Cashless bail, those are all George Soros funded attorneys. He also funds these protests we saw in the George Floyd riots in 2020. Hey, still same state, right? This guy is behind some of these things. So that's the first point I want to make. And here's a graphic of some of his organizations. He's also part of the World Economic Forum, which says you're going to own nothing and like it. Now, this guy, Klaus Schwab, also, I hope you heard of him. He claim to fame was during COVID. He sounds like a German Bond villain. If you've never heard this guy talk, I mean, he really does with the accent and everything. But he's one of these global reset type of people. And in short, that means let us, the elites, let us at the World Economic Forum tell you how to live your life. Own nothing and be happy. But in case you can't see it or you're just listening, says the pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world. Your individual freedom does not matter to these people. The crown jewel of the WEF and people like him and George Soros is United States of America. Image you see is a guy named Alex Jones, host of InfoWars, but he's been right on so many things over the decades. The second point is that something he says, and as well as other people, that these protests are just to foment a general sense of chaos. It is, in a sense, a psyop to make you think that the current leaders, who happen to be Republican, are not in control, that they have, the society has gone mad because of what they're doing or not doing. So therefore what? They must be voted out of power. And these protests, one of the reasons is to foment this chaos so that people who are independents, people who are in the middle will look at that and go, well, gosh, I better vote Democrat so this doesn't keep happening. Stores don't get looted. People don't get beaten up in the street. The third point is that protests play perfectly into our feminized and increasingly feminized American culture and society. What do I mean by that? The hatred of patriarchy, men, so you choose safety over security, cohesion over controversy, and reassurance over risk. And I shouldn't even have to say this, that female is bad. I'm saying the feminization of America is bad because of these certain traits that have, when they get to an institutional level, can cause all kinds of bad things to happen. We don't run a country on empathy and compassion. We run on logic, laws, and a certain moral code that must be adhered to.
How much fun is it in that room? Sitting there, you have a couple cocktails, you hang out with everybody, and there's all kinds of conversations going on.
This is Mark Ruffalo, by the way, the actor who played the Incredible Hulk in all those Avengers.
I'm feeling so great. We have a woman, Renee Good, was murdered in our streets of America today, and we got literally stormtroopers running around terrorizing. And as much as I love all this, I don't know if I can pretend like this crazy stuff isn't happening. We have a president who says the laws of the world don't apply to him, and we could rely on his morality, but he has no morality. So where does that leave us? Where does that leave the world? It's so hard to pretend anymore. This is crazy what's happening.
You're an actor, dummy. All you do is pretend. God, does he not have, like one of my favorite comedians, Nick DiPaolo, says, does he not have the most punchable face? Virtue signaling. And all of what you're saying is based on lies, on whatever media this dummy actor goes and listens to. He was trying to ask a nice question. Hey, isn't this a good time? Ruffalo gives his stupid speech. And this is an article I mentioned in a prior episode by Helen Andrews. Some key points on what I mean by feminization of America. In other words, let me give a law as an example, like Helen Andrews talked about. Do you really want those lawyers to be all concerned about empathy and other people's feelings, or you want to be concerned about the letter of the law? What is true and right and just? The cultural values. So let me read it to you. The shift is noted from masculine coded values, rationality, competition, risk, to feminine coded ones, empathy, safety, social cohesion, sometimes linked to the rise of wokeness. The fourth point is that protests can shield or protect illegals when they vote. As you can see, some of the images popping up. Tax dollars are given to certain organizations, which then turn around and give them to illegals, which then turn around and ensure them to vote. And the fraud keeps going. But the protests want to protect that. The fifth point, which piggybacks off that, is that the protests want to protect illegals voting not only with the money kickbacks, but no ID. Notice over the years, decades, Democrats do not want voter ID. Why? And they vote for Democrats. You're going to do what? Retain your power. The gray is bad. Look at all of those gray states. Again, here's another one. Gray is bad, showing that don't really require voter ID. The sixth point is that protests are meant to discourage probing into potential fraud. hopefully the protests will ramp up enough where people, ICE, the DOJ, the IRS don't come in and look at where is this money going? Where is it coming from? Remember Doge? You're looking at a picture right now, Elon Musk. Such pushback from the Democrats. Why? These people cannot let you find out who's running the show and who's getting paid. Because then what happens? Accountability. Then what happens? They lose power. The very thing that all this protest and all this stuff is set up to protect, disguise, etc. Remember that with Doge? Stop the steal. When in fact you've been stealing in Minnesota this whole time, all for votes and power. I would say this is the seventh point, is that the protests, why in these sanctuary cities? Because as we've seen, they get money from the federal government. Protests can distract from that. Illegals come in, we get money for this from the federal government. It's all part of this rigged game. And don't forget what Tom Homan said was so true. You don't want ICE in your streets in these cities? Guess what? Then don't release them from jail. So these mayors are releasing them. Again, this fomenting chaos. Another deeper point of this is the protests also mask and hide the reality of violent crime. They say that they're going after black and brown people. The graphic you're looking at now is Irina Zaruska, this wonderful Ukrainian immigrant who was stabbed in the neck in Charlotte, North Carolina, by a guy, cashless bail, by the way, black guy, who was let out, I think, 20 times, if I remember that. Some insane number. Do you realize when they book someone who is black or brown, they will put them as white to mess up the categorization and the way they track data on violent crime? Did you know that? They're doing that in some places. They do it in the prison systems in certain states. Gives fuel to protests and protesters who actually believe this, that they are being unfairly targeted, when in fact, they are committing these crimes. The Uniform Crime Reporting, UCR, maintained by the FBI, classifies individuals as white regardless of ethnicity, which includes both Hispanic and non-Hispanic individuals. Particularly when the racial identity of offenders is downplayed or omitted in media coverage. How many times have we seen that? If it's a white offender or criminal, they'll say the race. But if it's not, it'll just say something else. The black guy who brought the bomb to the NFL building. Remember that last year? They actually said he was white. On camera, you're like, yeah, not white. And it goes on. For example, news outlets have been observed to rarely report the race of non-white offenders, especially when the suspect is black. And what does this do to protesters? They buy this narrative. They get out in the streets. Again, chaos is fomented. The mainstream media have no conscience. Remember this? Look at this picture. Jake Tapper showed this picture. He's talking. It says, yeah, this is a white individual. He actually said that. I mean, what a joke. And that's CNN. Here's an article from the Manhattan Institute. It says, yes, the media bury the race of murders if they're not white. Another article by Uncorrelated. It says, white by default, systematic bias in U.S. criminal racial assignment. Pretty stat-heavy article. And this is from 1.5 million different records. The Democrats can say, look at all this injustice. But if you elect us, we'll take care of it. We'll make sure that you, black and brown, are protected. See how that works? They feed a lie, then they feed you another lie. Former father-in-law of Renee Good, the woman who was shot that I showed at the beginning of this episode.
I'm not blaming anybody. I mean, it's a hard situation all the way around. It's hard for for everybody involved. I mean, the ICE agent, at first I didn't see the footage where, he was actually, he was actually being ran. I mean, I seen the bump of the car hitting his legs. And so in a flash like that, it's hard to say how you would react. From my understanding that he had been through that before, maybe dragged or something.
He was dragged.
So, but I think there's some bad choices.
So to recap and to conclude this episode, if some of those points I went through in trying to get to the deeper agenda, if I could say that, behind the protest, and if you're sitting there going, you buy some of those, maybe you buy all of those that I put out, Do you not feel like this is a rigged game? And what I try to show today is these deeper things that are going on, a deeper agenda, a more insidious agenda, if I could say that. A rigged game, a psyop, fomenting chaos. A rigged game, we appeal to your feminized side because you're in a feminized culture of empathy and compassion against the evil eyes people, so come out and protest. A rigged game funded by Soros and like, who want total chaos in this country, from liberal attorneys general who have cashless bail. A rigged game in paying illegals and getting kickbacks so that you get their votes. A rigged game with no voter ID so that we can get votes from the very people that we give benefits to. You already heard this fact that I think something like 80% of Somalis were on welfare and getting government aid with no jobs. All we want in return is your votes. A rigged game on misclassifying racial data on violent crimes, as I showed you, which in turn gets more protests because injustice, quote unquote, is being done against black and brown people. We know that's not the case. And all of this rigged game is so that we can stay in power, we being the Democrats. And if we get rich in the process like Ilhan Omar, then great. So I hope you don't ever look at these protests as just, oh, people are upset and it's just grassroots. It's all a mirage. Look at the deeper stuff going on. And I could be wrong, but these are the things that I think about of what's really happening. No wonder Trump is so hated. Because he hates a rigged game. He hates being conned. He doesn't like secrecy. And he's exposing it. Which is why when he got elected for a third time, they were losing their minds. Oh my gosh, he's going to find out about the rigged game and put in a stop to it. Which means what? We're out of power if you're a Democrat. And some rhinos. Well, I hope you're not feeling too overwhelmed after listening to this episode. And until next time, stay alert, stand firm, show courage, and be sound.